Om Shanti. So welcome all of you to the Values for Life
ओम
series.
शांति। आप सबका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है
As always,
वैल्यूज ऑफ
before we
लाइफ
begin,
सीरीज की इस प्रोग्राम में।
spend a
इससे
minute in
पहले कि हम
silence
शुरू करें, एक
for
मिनट
the
हम
presence of the
साइलेंस में
Supreme Being.
बिताएंगे और परमपिता परमात्मा का आवाहन करेंगे।
So welcome all of you once again. And
सभी का
welcome to the
बहुत बहुत
episode
स्वागत है
91 on flexibility.
एपिसोड 91 फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी में। आप लचीलापन, इस पर
Normally, we
आपका
are
बहुत
supposed to do
बहुत
it on a Saturday
स्वागत है।
evening for India and Saturday
हम
morning for
सैटरडे
West Coast. So thanks for
इवनिंग
being so
को
flexible.
करते हैं
And the
इंडिया
value
के
is all
हिसाब
about
से, और
flexibility. It's
यहाँ के
been like
हिसाब से सुबह
90
होता है।
episodes we have covered. It
ये
feels like
जो
we just started a few
90
months ago.
एपिसोड हम ऑलरेडी
And I would
कवर कर
really
चुके
thank
हैं, ऐसा लगता है
our
अभी
esteemed
शुरू किया
speakers
हुआ
today.
है। हम
Brother
अपने
Charlie
स्पीकर्स
and
का
Sister
बहुत
Amy, who
बहुत
are joining all the way
शुक्रिया
from
अदा
Australia
करते हैं, जिन्होंने
and Melbourne,
ऑस्ट्रेलिया
Sydney.
से ज्वाइन किया
Thank
है,
you both of you. And
मेलबर्न
before I
सिडनी से।
pass it
आप
on to
सबका
you,
बहुत बहुत
as
स्वागत है।
always, I need to
इससे
introduce
पहले
both of
कि
you
मैं
to our
आपको
audience.
पास ऑन करूं,
Brother
मैं
Charlie has
अपने
been with us many
ब्रदर
times.
चार्ली
We have
हमारे
been
साथ
missing him
बहुत
since
बार
almost,
जुड़
I must
चुके
say,
हैं।
the last
हम
1.5
पिछले
years.
1.5
And he is the
के
national
बाद अभी
coordinator
ब्रदर
for
आए
the
हैं।
Brahma
वो
Kumaris in
नेशनल
Australia
कोऑर्डिनेटर
and
हैं
also the chairman
ब्रह्मा
of its
कुमारीज
board
के,
of directors.
बोर्ड ऑफ
Based in
डायरेक्टर
Sydney
हैं, ऑस्ट्रेलिया
and
में हैं,
regularly visits
बेस्ड
the
हैं ये
40
सिडनी में,
PK centers which are
और
all around
इन्होंने
Australia and
40
spread all over.
सेंटर जो हैं वो वहाँ पर
And
हैं,
Brother
जिसके ये
Charlie
कोऑर्डिनेटर
actually
हैं।
came into
नेशनल ब्रदर जो हैं
knowledge
वो
to the Brahma
ज्ञान
Kumaris in
में आए
London
थे ब्रह्मा
in
कुमारीज में लंदन में
1975, where he learned meditation. He was actively
1975 में,
seeking
जहाँ पर
spirituality.
ये
After then, there
ढूंढ
was no
रहे थे
looking
कुछ
back. Within 2
आध्यात्मिकता
years,
को।
from
उसके बाद इन्होंने
1975 to
पीछे मुड़कर
77,
देखा नहीं।
he returned back to
77
Australia
फिर
to
ये
open a
ऑस्ट्रेलिया
center
में
in
चले गए,
Melbourne
वहां
in the
पर
area called
मेलबर्न में
Collingwood.
सेंटर खोलने
And
के
then
लिए।
on, there are almost,
और उसके
he is now
बाद
presiding over 40 different centers all over Australia,
40
including 3
सेंटर जो
retreat
हैं वो
centers.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया
Quite a
में
few
हैं,
of
और
them
3
people know.
रिट्रीट सेंटर हैं।
Mornington, one in Melbourne, the one which is
एक
south of
मेलबर्न
Sydney
में
near
है,
Wollongong, and
जो
Blue Mountains, the third one in the west of Sydney.
वेस्ट
And
ऑफ सिडनी
as we
में।
speak, he's been into knowledge since 1975. So it's
ये ज्ञान में
40 years almost
1975
now.
से
So
49
welcome,
इयर्स
Brother
हो
Charlie.
चुके
And
हैं ब्रदर
we
को
also
ज्ञान
have
में
with us,
चलते
who will be
हुए।
interviewing him. So we have Sister Amy Trivedi. I
हमारे
must
साथ
tell you,
सिस्टर
she's very
एमी हैं।
humble because she's only written
सिस्टर
2 lines
बहुत
in
ही
her
नम्र हैं,
introduction.
इन्होंने सिर्फ
So
2
I can
लाइन
only
लिखी
speak
हैं
those 2
अपने
lines. She
इंट्रोडक्शन
thinks
में।
she's a
मैं
curious
दो
thinker
मैं
and
ये
a very
एक
regular
क्यूरियस
Raj Yoga
थिंकर हैं
student,
और
always on a
राजयोगा
L plate.
स्टूडेंट है।
We'll let her describe what's L
वो
plate.
हमेशा
She
एल
works as an
प्लेट में
IT
है,
professional
आईटी
and has led
प्रोफेशनल हैं ये।
many teams and projects for many
बहुत
large
सारी
organizations.
टीम इसने लार्ज
Welcome, Sister Amy,
ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में
as well.
चलाती
Thank
हैं।
you both of you
सिस्टर
for
एमी
joining.
को भी मैं
And
हम बहुत बहुत
before I
स्वागत
pass
करते
it
हैं,
on to
दोनों का स्वागत
Sister
करते हैं।
Taran for
सिस्टर
welcoming
तरन
us,
से मैं
and she
कहूँगा
will
कि वो
start,
इनका
as
स्वागत
always,
करें,
the poem for
हमेशा
both
की
of
तरह।
them and the
पोयम
value
जो है
today, which we
दोनों
are
के
covering,
लिए,
called
और जो
flexibility.
वैल्यू है
So from
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी की,
today's
इस पर हम
session,
कर्म
let's
करेंगे। आज
infuse
का
in
जो
our life
सेशन है,
this new
अपने
vitality
जीवन में हम इस
so that in
न्यू
life we are
वाइटैलिटी को
agile and full
इन्फ्यूज
of
करें,
flexibility.
ताकि हमारा
In today's
जीवन
life,
बहुत
where
ही
we
लचीला
experience a
और
lot of
फ्लेक्सिबल बन
hostility,
सके। हम
only
बहुत
few souls
हॉस्टैलिटी
like Brother
महसूस
Charlie
करते हैं,
prove
थोड़ी
that
ही
they are filled
आत्माएं
with
जो ऐसी हैं,
nobility,
जैसे ब्रदर
which
चार्ली हैं, फुल
infuses in
ऑफ
all of us
नोबिलिटी हैं,
much needed possibility
जो मच
that
नीडेड
life is indeed
पॉसिबिलिटी है कि जीवन जो है वो
if we follow the path of spirituality.
वर्थ लिविंग है अगर हम आध्यात्मिकता
Also,
के
Sister
रास्ते पर
Amy is a
चलते
living
हैं।
example
सिस्टर
of
एमी के
that
लिए ये एक
capability
लिविंग
that
एग्जाम्पल
each
है
one of
इस
us has to take
कैपेबिलिटी का। हम सभी
self-responsibility.
इनमें से एक सेल्फ
Because Raj
रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ले
Yoga
लेते
teaches
हैं,
us this
क्योंकि राजयोगा जो है
ability
वो हमें बहुत
that
सुंदर
relying on
एबिलिटी
the self
सिखाता है,
is indeed
जो
the
हमारे
true
ऊपर हम
reliability, which keeps us away
अपनी
from
एक
the
रिलायबिलिटी
stress
रखते
and
हैं,
mental
जो
fatigue,
कि हमें स्ट्रेस से
making
दूर
us
रखता
realize
है
that
और
self-care
हमें ये
indeed
रियलाइज
is
कराता है कि
feasibility,
सेल्फ
it's
केयर जो
possible.
है वो
And that
पॉसिबल है।
meditation in this
और
fast life
मेडिटेशन जो है
is
इस
of
जीवन
a
में
lot of utility.
बहुत
So
ही
with
इसकी
these few
यूटिलिटी
words,
है,
I would
इसको हम
request Sister
इस्तेमाल कर
Taran to
सकते हैं।
welcome both.
इसके साथ ही मैं सिस्टर तरन से कहूंगा कि वो थैंक यू मनोज
So
भाई,
on
तरन
behalf
सिस्टर,
of Sister Claudia and Ananda
सिस्टर
Sister
क्लाउडिया के
and
बिहाफ
the
पर
whole Values for Life team,
और
like
सभी
to
वैल्यूज ऑफ लाइफ
welcome
सीरीज
Charlie brother and
की
Amy
टीम की
sister
तरफ से
for
मैं
this
चार्ली ब्रदर और एमी
beautiful
ब्रदर
plant.
को मैं स्वागत
I
करती हूँ। ये
usually
सुंदर
give
प्लांट से
great
स्वागत
plants
करती
because
हूँ।
I love
मैं
the
प्लांट
growing plants because I think with as the plant
इसमें
grows,
अच्छा
they're
लगता है
helping
मुझे
us
प्लांट ग्रो
to
करे,
grow with the knowledge
हमें
and
भी मदद करता है,
share the
हमें इस
wisdom.
ज्ञान
So
के
please
साथ, और
accept this plant. We'll plant it in on your behalf.
हम आपके बिहाफ पर इसको प्लांट करेंगे। हाँ हाँ,
Thank you
थैंक
so
यू,
much, Sister Tara.
थैंक यू
Really
सिस्टर।
appreciate. They're beautiful,
हम
very
आपका बहुत
beautiful
सुंदर
color.
करते हैं, बहुत सुंदर रंग है फूलों का,
Yeah, thank
हमने
you.
इसको
Thank
एक्सेप्ट
you.
किया।
Sister Taran, yeah, and yeah, before I
थैंक
pass
यू
it on to
सिस्टर
the
तरन। इससे पहले
speakers,
कि
a
मैं
few housekeeping
स्पीकर्स को
instructions.
पास
As
ऑन
all of you know,
करूं,
the
मैं
interpretation
हाउस
icons
कीपिंग
today we have with
इंस्ट्रक्शन
us
है हमारे
Portuguese,
साथ,
Chinese, Mandarin,
पोर्टुगीज,
that is
चाइनीज,
Spanish, Hindi, and
मैंडेरियन
Tamil.
और
So
स्पेनिश,
please feel free
हिंदी
to
में
pick up
और
the room
तमिल
which
में
you want to be in.
ट्रांसलेशन हो रही है। कोई भी
We have
रूम आप
almost
पिकअप
an hour,
कर
like
सकते हैं
50,
अपने
55
हिसाब से।
minutes for the talk. And
55
please
मिनट्स
actively start
ब्रदर की
sending me
जो
your
होगी,
questions related to
आप अपने
flexibility
क्वेश्चन मेरी
because
तरफ
brother
भेज
Charlie
सकते हैं।
loves that.
भाई
He loves the
55
interaction, the
मिनट्स
questions.
करेंगे बात,
And please feel
आप
free to
अपने
post
प्रश्न हमें
questions,
भेज
whatever you
सकते
feel.
हैं,
I mean, just
जो
speak
भी
your
आपको
mind and
अच्छे
ask me,
लगते
no
हैं वो
problem.
प्रश्न
I'll
वो
just
आप मुझसे
read
पूछ
it out
सकते
for
हैं
you. And
और
we'll
मैं
just
उसको,
pass it on to both of them. Thank you once again for
मैं
the
आप दोनों को
sages
पास ऑन
arguments.
करता हूँ। आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया
Thank you
है।
so much, Manoj Bhai.
थैंक यू मनोज भाई।
Yeah, that was such a lovely poem. Thank you so
सच
much. I
बहुत ही
can imagine
सुंदर
how much
पोयम
thought's
थी।
gone into that. And
हम कितने
to
सारे
Sister
कोट्स
Taran,
आपने
thank
उसमें
you. Could
डाले हैं।
really
थैंक यू
feel the
सिस्टर तरन।
beauty of the
हम
flowers
महसूस
and
कर सकते हैं
perfect timing
सुंदरता
because it's
फूलों की,
also during
बहुत ही
spring. It's all,
परफेक्ट
you know,
टाइम
we
है।
don't see as much flowers around, so it's so nice to see the beautiful color and your good
बहुत ही
wishes.
सुंदर फूलों का
And
रंग था और हम
Shanti and
शुक्रिया अदा
yeah,
करते हैं
wonderful to
आपका
be
बहुत
part
बहुत।
of this gathering.
बहुत
Values
ही
for Life
वंडरफुल है
series.
आपके
I've been
साथ में, हम
watching
इसके
it
साथ।
from a distance, and so it's great to be part of it today. And how great to have this opportunity to also
कितनी
interview
अच्छी बात है कि हम हम इसमें पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं। मनोज भाई का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया है। नोबिलिटी का एग्जाम्पल भाई देते दे ही चुके हैं।
part of my learning is going to be
मेरी जो
interview as well to
सीखा है वो जो
explore
इंटरव्यू
with
से,
all
मैं
of you
इंटरव्यू जो भाई को
this
करती हूँ उससे मैं
virtue of
काफी कुछ सीखती
flexibility.
हूँ। ये जो
So I
मूल्य
was
हमने
thinking how
चुना है,
timely it is as well,
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी
because
यानी
I'm
लचीलापन,
sure in India and around the world you're probably
इंडिया में
hearing a
और
lot about
सब
the
जगह हम
upcoming
बहुत ज्यादा
Yoga Day
हम सुन रहे हैं कि
here
जो
in
अभी योगा डे
June
आने वाला है,
next
जिस
month.
जून में
And
अगले
you know
महीने
that
जो
they say
होगा,
it's all about flexibility. You know, the more
ये सब
flexible you are,
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी के
the
बारे में है।
more
जितने ज्यादा हम
sort of
फ्लेक्सिबल
stretches you
होंगे
can
उतने
take.
ज्यादा हम उसको
And if you're not, the
स्ट्रेचेस
more
हम
you're
कर
going to
सकते
be
हैं।
more
अगर
flexible your
हम
body
जितना
can
ज्यादा
become.
अपने शरीर को
And
फ्लेक्सिबल
as
कर
Manoj
सकें
Bhai
उतने ज्यादा।
highlighted in his poem as well,
भाई
that
ने
at
अपनी
corporate
पोयम में
level,
कहा है
we are
कि
constantly faced with many challenges.
कॉरपोरेशन लेवल पर हम बहुत चैलेंजेस में
We
फेस
are
करते
often
हैं और हम हमेशा
expecting
कभी
others
कभी हम
to be
एक्सपेक्ट करते
flexible.
हैं दूसरों को भी कि
And
वो
very little
फ्लेक्सिबल
do
हों
we
हमारे
realize
साथ,
that how much we
और
need
हम
to
ये
be
रियलाइज
flexible
करते हैं कि
ourselves.
हमें कितना खुद
So I'm
फ्लेक्सिबल
really
होने की
looking forward
जरूरत है।
to
तो मैं
today
देख रही हूँ,
to really learn with from Charlie Bai
मैं चार्ली भाई से
about this
सीखूंगी आज
issue
भी
of
और कि
flexibility.
ये वर्च्यूज
So
ऑफ
to start off
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी के
with, it
बारे
would
में
be great
हम स्टार्ट
to
करते
hear
हैं।
Charlie Bai. What in your
चार्ली
words
भाई,
would this virtue, this quality
ये
of
जो मूल्य है
flexibility mean? What
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी,
does it
इसका
mean to
क्या
you?
मतलब है आपके आप अपने हिसाब से
Well,
इसका
first of
क्या
all,
मतलब हमें
thank you
समझाएंगे।
so much, Ami. It's
सबसे
really
पहले
lovely to
मैं
be a
शुक्रिया
part of
अदा
this.
करूंगा कि
Thank
मैं
you,
इसका
Taran,
पार्ट हूँ। थैंक
Sister
यू
Taran
तरन
again for the
सिस्टर
lovely flowers, and of course
और
Manoj
सुंदर
Bhai.
फूलों के लिए,
He's
और मनोज
amazing
भाई
how he
बहुत बहुत
holds this
शुक्रिया
together.
किस
You
तरह से
know,
वो हम
the
सबको
image
बांधे
I
हुए
love,
रखते
you've
हैं।
given the image
जो
of perhaps
इमेज
the
मुझे
yoga is
अच्छी
a
लगती है,
tree in front of a huge gale, a huge wind,
ट्री,
and in a way,
एक
a
हवा के
tree's
सामने जो
perfectly
है वो
designed,
पेड़
isn't
है,
it, to
वो पेड़ जो है वो
adjust to this
डिजाइंड
wind and
होता
just
है,
bend and
वो
bend
अपने
and
आप
keep
को
being
उस हवा के
flexible.
हिसाब से एडजस्ट
So
कर लेता है।
the
वो
wisdom of
कितना
the tree, it doesn't
फ्लेक्सिबल
spend
होता है।
rigid.
तो
in
जो
front of a room
विवेक
with
है
factors.
पेड़ की, वो जो
But
है
you
वो
know, I
एक
think
खड़ा नहीं
for
रहता
me
रिजिड
that
होकर के, वो अपनी
this
विंड के
quality,
हिसाब
like
से,
all
हवा के
qualities,
हिसाब
they
से
have
अपने
a
आप को
different
एडजस्ट कर लेता
dimensions.
है।
There's a
दूसरी
physical level of
क्वालिटियों की तरह
flexibility where
इसको हम फिजिकल
in
लेवल पे अगर देखें
situations with
तो
all
किसी
different
भी
types of
परिस्थिति में,
personalities that we
किसी भी
all have
तरह
to
की
deal with
पर्सनालिटी
today,
जो
we
हमें
adjust,
सबके जीवन में
we
आती हैं,
let
हम
go,
उनके
we
हिसाब से
we
एडजस्ट
keep
करते
sort of
हैं, हम लेट गो करते हैं
adjusting
कुछ बातों
to
को और हम
the
एडजस्ट करते
reality of
हैं।
situations, tuning into
जो भी
people and their
परिस्थिति की
vibrations. How do
रियलिटी
I
है
sort of
और वाइब्रेशन
work
है,
with a
किस तरह से
situation?
हम परिस्थिति
But I
के
think
साथ
there's a
कार्य कर
mental
सकते हैं।
flexibility too. And a
ये
lot of
मन
it
की
for me is
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी भी
around
होती है
listening well.
हमारे पास, जो है
Because,
वो
you know,
हम जब इसके
sometimes you
बारे में
can
सुनते हैं,
be in front
कभी
of
कभी
somebody
हम
and you
किसी के
make a lot of
सामने होते हैं,
assumptions about them. I know you.
हम बहुत
I
सारी
know what
एजम्पशंस
you're
कर
going to
लेते
say.
हैं,
I know your
हमें पता है आप
perspective.
कैसे हो, हम किस तरह
And
से आप
I
बात
think to be
करते हो, क्या
flexible, to
सोचते
keep
हो,
my mind
लेकिन
open
फ्लेक्सिबल
to
होना कि अपने मन
that
को हम
person, and
खुला
perhaps we
रखें
could say
उस
listen to
व्यक्ति
the
के बारे
heart
में, कि हम उसके
rather than the
बात
words, so
को
that
सुने अपने दिल से,
you really listen
उनके
to
अपने दिल से उस
where that
बात को
person is
सुने,
coming
और
from.
जो व्यक्ति जो है
But
वो
I would
क्या
say
हमें
even an
कहने की
emotional
कोशिश कर रहा है।
flexibility too,
जो
where we,
इमोशनल फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी की
you know,
बात हम
often
करते हैं,
in situations, what I often feel is that
परिस्थितियों
life
में क्या होता है कि
triggers
मैं
my
महसूस करता हूँ
emotions and
कि
my feelings. You know,
हमारे जो
we have
इमोशन
this
है वो
whole
फीलिंग है,
spectrum of feelings inside of us, and
हमारे बहुत
a
सारे फीलिंग्स है
behavior, a
जिसका एक
facial
स्पेक्ट्रम बनाया
expressions,
जा
word
सकता है,
triggers.
हमारे शब्द जो
And
उसमें
often
आते
the
हैं,
hurt
और हम
feeling, bad feeling, negative feeling, critical
अच्छी
feeling,
फीलिंग भी हैं,
it
क्रिटिकल
triggers so
फीलिंग भी हैं,
naturally.
बैड भी हैं,
And yet,
ये सब कुछ हमारे
you know,
स्पेक्ट्रम में
so we
होता
have
है,
sort of a rigid response. But
हम उसका जो है
I
रिजिड
think
रिस्पॉन्स
flexibility is
देते
just
हैं।
keeping my feelings light
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी जो है वो अपनी
and
फीलिंग्स को हम जब हल्का रखते
and
हैं और
not sort of
ओपन रखते हैं,
allowing the sort of the
फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी का
whole
यही मतलब है,
waterfall
हम
of
उसको
those
Mm.
negative, critical, ill, hurt feelings.
जो
So
नेगेटिव या
flexibility can be
हर्ट
mental,
फीलिंग होती है
emotional,
उसको हम
as
नहीं
well as
लेकर
dealing
आते
with
हैं।
the reality of families and
हम जब रियलिटी
workplaces and
और परिवार के साथ या
relationships
काम
and
पर
so
ये
on.
डील करते हैं, तो हम अपने आप को बहुत ही
That's so
लचीला और
amazing,
फ्लेक्सिबल
what you
रखते
have
हैं।
shared, Shalibai,
बहुत
about
ही
really
अच्छा
looking
आपने
at it
शेयर
from
किया
all
लाडसा
different
चार्ली भाई की,
angles.
बहुत
And
अलग
can
अलग
we
एंगल से
unpack
जब
this a
हम
little bit
देखते हैं
more,
इसको,
that why
और भी
now
ज्यादा
do
आप
we need to be more
क्या कहेंगे कि
flexible?
क्यों हमें इस
You
समय
know,
ज्यादा फ्लेक्सिबल होने की
because you
जरूरत क्यों
travel a
है?
lot around the world.
आपने
You
बहुत
visit,
दुनिया
you
में
know, many
ट्रेवल भी किया
centers,
है,
as well as you're part of many other gatherings in different
आप बहुत सारी
organizations,
गैदरिंग का
communities.
पार्ट भी हैं।
What is your sense that why now should we be paying more
अभी
attention
हमें
to
अभी
this
इस समय
issue?
हमें ज्यादा फ्लेक्सिबल होने की क्यों
Well,
जरूरत
I
है?
mean, the world is changing faster than any
ये
time in
दुनिया जो
history.
है वो तेजी
And there's
तेजी
a
से बदल रही है।
historian
इस समय पूरी
who
हिस्ट्री को देखा जाए तो
believes, he says, he believes there's been more change in the last 60, 70, 80 years than the whole of
जो बहुत
history
ज्यादा
put together.
बदलाव आया है 60 और 65
so
सालों से
all of us
पिछले,
are trying
इतना
to
पूरी
deal with
हिस्ट्री में कभी
change in
बदलाव नहीं आया। हम
family,
सभी इस बदलाव
change
को
in
देख
roles of
रहे हैं,
gender,
परिवारों में देख
change in
रहे हैं,
workplaces,
अपने
change in
परिवारों में
society,
देख रहे हैं,
change in
अपने
technology.
सोसाइटी में देख रहे हैं,
And
चेंज इन
often
टेक्नोलॉजी
what
में देख
happens,
रहे
what
हैं।
I've
और
observed
और
in
मैं क्या
myself,
देखता
that
हूँ अपने आप में कि
sometimes we sort of feel I have to adapt, I have to
कभी
tolerate,
हमें ये
you know,
होता
I
है कि
have
हमें
to, you know, that
एडेप्टेट करना
language.
है और टॉलरेट भी
But I
करना है,
began to observe that
पर
adapting
मैंने
or
ये
being
देखना
flexible
शुरू
is
किया है
letting go of all forms
एडेप्टेबिलिटी,
of resistance.
किसी भी
You
तरह
know,
के
the
रेजिस्टेंस
mindset
को
or the
जब हम
game
जाने
stress is sort
देते
of your
हैं, लेट
mind.
गो करते हैं
You
कि
mightn't
आपका
show it
मन
much
जो
on
है
your
वो किस
face, but in
तरह
your
से सेट
mind
हो,
there's sort of a
आपके मन में वो
resistance.
नहीं दिखाई देता।
And that
आपकी जो
resistance is like
रेजिस्टेंस होती है वो
disliking,
रेजिस्टेंस जो है वो
disapproving,
डिसलाइक या डिसअप्रूव
rejection.
करते हैं, किसी को रिजेक्ट
And
करते हैं,
so that,
तो
I think, creates an amazing amount of stress and
जिससे
discomfort
बहुत ज्यादा
internally. Because
स्ट्रेस क्रिएट होता
I
है।
see a situation in front of me and I
जब हम
build
कोई
this wall of
परिस्थिति अपने
resistance in
सामने
my head
देखते
because
हैं तो हम
I don't like the
उसके
behavior, I
खिलाफ
don't
जो है
like
वो
the
हम
words, I don't
रेजिस्टेंस
like.
बना लेते हैं कि मुझे ये
And
शब्द
so
पसंद नहीं
that
आए,
lack of
मुझे ये बात
flexibility just
पसंद नहीं आई,
builds
और हम
incredible
इस तरह से
stress.
जो है वो
And
फ्लेक्सिबल नहीं
especially in these
बनते,
times, often they
तो हम
define
खुद
stress as a lack
स्ट्रेस
of
हो जाते
ability
हैं।
to deal with change.
तो
Mm.
हमारी
I
ये
was-
एबिलिटी है कि हम
why I used to
बदलाव
ask
के
myself
प्रति
why
कैसे
do I
चेंज कर
sometimes
सकते हैं,
resist
कि
and
कभी कभी
sometimes
मैं
quite
अपने आप को पूछता हूँ कि
strongly?
मैं इतना क्यों
Because
रेजिस्टेंस है और
often it's,
इतनी
I
ज्यादा
guess, we
क्यों होती है।
can't
ऐसा
accept
प्राय होता है
how
कि हम
things are, the way
एक्सेप्ट
things
नहीं
are.
कर
You know,
पाते
like
चीजों को,
we
वो
always
जैसी
want
हैं।
a
हम
different,
हमेशा
someone to
ऐसे
behave differently or a
हम
different
चाहते हैं
outcome.
कि दूसरे
Mm.
So
दूसरी
it's like I'm
तरह से बिहेव
attached
करें,
to
अलग
how
तरीके
things
से,
should be. In
क्योंकि
my
हम
head,
अटैच्ड
I
हूं
want
मैं
it to
कि
be a
दूसरों
certain
की
way, but it's different.
कैसे वो
Mm.
बिहेव करें। हमारे
I think
मन में एक
flexibility is
होती है, लेकिन
absolutely
वो फ्लेक्सिबल नहीं होता। फ्लेक्सिबल
accepting
का
that
मतलब है कि
this is the world
एक्सेप्ट
we're living
करना,
in. These are the
जो भी
people
हम
we're
जिस
living with.
दुनिया
We
में
have
रहते
to
हैं, जिस दुनिया में
accept
अब
rather
हम
than this
हैं,
constant
हमें उसको
resistance
एक्सेप्ट
with
करना
this
है। जो हमारे
expectation
अंदर
you
का
should be like
रेजिस्टेंस
this
होता है,
and this
एक
scene should
हम
be like that. And
जिसकी वजह से हम
I
एक्सेप्ट
feel
नहीं
this
कर पाते, वो
resistance
नहीं।
is so
तो हम इस
strong at the
रेजिस्टेंस
moment.
में इतना
And
बहुत
when we
ज्यादा
become
ये स्ट्रांग
flexible,
होता है,
it
लेकिन
relaxes
जब
us
हम
actually.
फ्लेक्सिबल होते हैं तो हम
It
बहुत
really cools us
रिलैक्स
down
होते हैं।
internally.
हमें ये ठंडा करती है ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी।
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
वंडरफुल, बहुत सुंदर भाई
Going
आपने
back to the
बताया।
analogy you shared
मैं
about this
चाहती
tree
हूँ
and the
कि मैं
wind,
उस एनालॉजी को
and
देखूं
to may
कि
almost
ट्री
think of
और विंड की
life
जो
not
हवा
to,
की आपने बात की,
try and
पेड़
swim
और
with
हवा,
the wind, but bend with it, and that's,
जो हवा के हिसाब से
yeah.
जो ट्री है
And
वो
you know,
अपने
what's
आप
the
को बदल
language? I mean,
लेता
the
है।
winds of
तो कौन सा,
change.
तो
We're
हम जो
caught in the
भाषा यूज
veil of
करते हैं,
change.
विंड
It's
ऑफ
like this
चेंज,
powerful wind. And
बदलाव की हवा,
quicksand,
हम
wind stood in
कहते हैं
front of it. It's
कि
just going
ये
to
जो है
knock
वो
me down.
पावरफुल
And unfortunately,
हवा
that's
है।
what a lot
तो
of
क्या
people are
होता है, वो
feeling at the
हवा हमें
moment.
गिरा सकती है, यही बहुत सारे लोग महसूस
That's so
करते हैं।
true.
लेकिन जब हम
How
फ्लेक्सिबल
did
हो
I
जाते
find
हैं तो हमें वो
Charlie,
गिराती
by
नहीं
that,
है। चार्ली भाई, मैंने क्या देखा है
say
कि
you're in a situation
आप एक ऐसी
where
परिस्थिति में
something
हैं
is,
जहां पर
what's happening is not right. And I will give you
जो
a
कुछ
very,
जो
very
हो रहा है वो
simple
बहुत सही
example.
नहीं है। आपको
Say,
बहुत ही
you work
सिंपल
in a
एग्जांपल
team
मैं आपको दूंगी
and
कि
one person habitually comes late to,
एक
the team
व्यक्ति है जो
meeting.
हमेशा लेट ही
And
आता
what
है।
happens is they're thinking, okay, how long do I continue to be flexible, be
तो हम
accommodative?
कितनी देर
Because
उसको
what's
देखते
going to
रहे हैं कि
happen
वो
is the
लेट
person
आता
who
है,
comes late
लेकिन हम
then
उसको
ends up
कुछ
having to
कहें
be
ना और उसकी
accommodated
इस व्यवहार को हम एक्सेप्ट कर लें।
later
तो
than
ऐसे हम
the
कैसे
time it should
उसको
ideally finish.
डील
And
कर
I'm giving
सकते
a
हैं।
very, a simple example, but often
मैं
we are
बहुत ही
faced
साधारण
with
सा एग्जाम्पल दे रही
dilemmas
हूँ।
where the other
ऐसा
party
दिलेमा
is
हमारे मन में होता है
completely
कि
at wrong, and you then
वो,
kind of think and go, okay, should I continue to be flexible, or is
तो हमें
there,
क्या फ्लेक्सिबल होते ही जाना है,
an extent,
या
a
हम
limit
उसकी इस
to
बात को
being flexible?
एक्सेप्ट करते
What's
जाएं,
your
या कोई
views on
लिमिट
that?
होती है फ्लेक्सिबल पर हम एक
In
हद
all
तक ही
these
हों।
incredible situations of life we're all
तो ये जो
facing.
इनक्रेडिबल सिचुएशंस
No, I
होती
mean,
हैं,
this is why
परिस्थितियां
at the
होती हैं
beginning,
अपने
I
जीवन की,
feel we should
तो
always be
बीन
mentally and emotionally flexible.
तो शुरू
In
में
other
हमें
words,
इमोशनल
because
जो
if I
फीलिंग
start to
होती है,
build a
दूसरे शब्दों
resistance
में
to
अगर
that
कहा
person
जाए,
being
अगर मैं
late,
रेजिस्टेंस कर लूं कि उस
I
व्यक्ति के
suddenly feel
प्रति,
anxious, stressed, a bit
तो
annoyed,
मेरे
maybe
अंदर खुद
angry,
एक
really.
एंजाइटी और गुस्सा
So it's
मेरे
almost
अंदर
like
पैदा होना
always
शुरू हो
I should
जाएगा।
be mentally
तो
and
हमेशा
emotionally
क्या
flexible,
होगा कि मेरे
but
मन में हमेशा
I feel it is
फ्लेक्सिबल होना
possible
होता
to
है,
say and
और
express
ये
myself, but it's
पॉसिबल हो,
not,
ये कहना
it's
हो
how
और मैं
I
अपनी बात
express
को
myself. And I
एक्सप्रेस
think
करूं।
this is
तो मैं अपने आप को एक्सप्रेस
very,
कैसे करता हूँ, वो
very
ज्यादा जरूरी
important.
है।
What is the
बहुत ही
intent? If
तरीके
I
से हम
say to
उसको
this
समझा
person
सकते हैं, किस
that
भाव
we'd
से
really,
और
really
भावना से
deeply
हम कह रहे
appreciate it
हैं।
if you could arrive
हम
on
उसको
time,
कहते
slightly
हैं,
respectful
हम
about
बहुत
time.
अप्रिशिएट करेंगे कि
Because
आप
I find
समय
that
पर आए। हम
the
ऐसा
law
कह
of
सकते
karma
हैं
is so
उनको
deep. It's
कि
all
जो
about
लेट
intent.
आते हैं उसके
So
पर
if
जो
the
इंटेंशन
intent
होती
is
है,
out of
तो
love
जो
and
इंटेंशन
respect
हमारी अगर प्यार की
for everyone,
होगी,
including that
सम्मान की
person, it will
होगी
have a good effect.
सभी के प्रति और
But if
उस
the
व्यक्ति
intent
के
is
भी
even
प्रति, तो
colored with
उसका
1%
असर
anger
बहुत
or
अच्छा होगा।
negativity,
लेकिन 1%
pretty
भी
quickly
अगर
it'll
एंगर
create
होगा या
a
उसके
bad
अंदर
vibration.
नेगेटिविटी होगी, तो वो
So
बैड
I should not
वाइब्रेशन को
resist
क्रिएट
mentally and
करेगा। तो
build up
हमें
the
अपने
pressure in
मन
my
में
head,
रेजिस्ट नहीं करना है,
but
अपने मन
or
में प्रेशर
emotionally, but
नहीं
I
बनाना है,
can
लेकिन
express.
हमें उसको
But I
एक्सप्रेस
feel
करना है।
I wouldn't express unless my intent is
मुझे
really
जब तक
clean
एक्सप्रेस नहीं
and
करना है, जब तक
respectful
कि
and
मेरी
loving,
भावना
because then the
बहुत ही
person
प्यार
mostly will
भरी,
take it as that
सम्मान
clean.
भरी और
It's when
तभी
it even has a little
उस
bit of
फीलिंग के साथ दूसरा व्यक्ति
anger or
हमारे जो
resentment or whatever is
हमारी जो
triggering
बात
that
को वो एक्सेप्ट करेगा कि वो
those
देर
words,
से
it will not
ना
have that
आए।
effect.
तो हम अगर हमारे
So
मन
what's
की
the point?
भावना में थोड़ा सा भी एंगर
So it's
या
like
थोड़ा
yes
सा भी
and
हमारी
no.
भावना में हेट्रेड होगी, उस बात को हम स्वीकार नहीं
That's a
करेंगे तो
wonderful
अच्छी तरह
strategy
नहीं कह
you
पाएंगे।
shared
तो
with
आपने
us,
ये
Chandra,
बहुत
that
वंडरफुल
checking
स्ट्रेटजी बताई चार्ली
your
भाई कि
intent
चेकिंग
and
अपनी भाव और भावनाओं
ensuring
को
that
हमें
we are
चेक
not
करना
being
है
resistant
कि हम
or being flexible.
रेजिस्टेंट ना हो, हम
And
फ्लेक्सिबल
that
हों।
should, so it would be a good method to experiment
तो
with
ये
and
बहुत
see,
अच्छा मेथड आपने हमें
whether it
बताया
can
है
be successful.
और हम
in
इससे
this.
सक्सेसफुल हो सकते हैं।
Another little dilemma
एक
I
और
often
बात होती
find
है,
myself
डिलेमा
facing
होता है
is
मन
one
में, जैसे मैंने
where
अपने आप को
someone
पाया
is
है
wrong,
कि
which
कभी
you've
कोई
shared great
रॉन्ग है
strategies
या
for.
गलत है।
But the other one that I often find also is where the other person is not flexible themselves.
दूसरा व्यक्ति जो मान लो वो
So
बहुत
then
फ्लेक्सिबल नहीं है,
sometimes you kind of go, well, they're not being flexible, so why should
तो ये
I?
फ्लेक्सिबल नहीं है तो मुझे फ्लेक्सिबल होने की जरूरत नहीं है। क्या ऐसे दूसरा व्यक्ति सोच सकता है? क्या मुझे अगर दूसरा व्यक्ति फ्लेक्सिबल कभी भी नहीं है और मैं ही बार बार फ्लेक्सिबल हो रहा हूँ, तो क्या मैं को भी इनफ्लेक्सिबल, मेरे में भी वो
The
लचीलापन
world is
खत्म हो
unfortunately
जाए?
full of stubborn people
तो
sometimes. That's
तो ये
probably
दुनिया तो काफी
the
स्टबन
word
लोगों
for
से भरी हुई
inflexible.
है। तो ये जो
Sometimes
शब्द
people have a
फ्लेक्सिबल है,
very rigid
कभी कभी लोग
perspective.
बहुत ही रिजिड हो
So
जाते
if
हैं।
I confront that with my stubborn
अगर
nature, what's
मैं
going to happen?
मैं भी
It's
खुद
going to be
जिद्दी
two
या
bulls
स्टबन हो
sort of.
जाऊं उनके सामने,
And
तो
this is
क्या
where I
होगा? एक
think
फाइट होती है, तो वो क्लैश होता है और
humility is an
टकराव होता है।
incredibly
तो
powerful
नम्रता जो
virtue.
है वो बहुत ही
Because
शक्तिशाली
stubbornness
गुण
is
है,
really a child of
मूल्य है।
ego. I'm right.
स्टबन
I'm
जो है
right.
वो
The way
मतलब
I
कि
see
मैं
things is the
बहुत,
way it is.
मेरे
It's
अंदर
like
ईगो है कि जैसा मैं
a
हूँ, जैसी मैं
mental
हूँ, वो
sort of
बहुत अपने आप
rigidity
को
or
हम ऊंचा
stubbornness
रखते हैं।
in
तो
that
वो
way.
होती है रिजिडनेस और
There's no point
स्टबननेस।
confronting that with the same
उसको हमें
energy.
कभी भी
And
कन्फ्रंट नहीं
sometimes I
करना
think with
चाहिए, मतलब उसकी
humility and
खिलाफत
showing
कभी नहीं
respect,
करनी चाहिए। तो
it really
ह्यूमिलिटी के द्वारा,
softens.
नम्रता
Because
के
I
द्वारा
remember once
और
I had a job
रिस्पेक्ट
when I
के
was
द्वारा हम
early in my
उसको
days of
मैं
practicing
एक जॉब में
meditation.
था, मैं
And my
बहुत ही
boss
शुरुआत
was
में जब
an
मेडिटेशन कर
ex-sergeant
रहा
major
था,
of the army.
मेरा
And he
जो
was your
बॉस था वो
archetypal sort of
मेजर था
army
आर्मी के
leader.
अंदर, और वो
A
आर्मी की
really
तरह ही
big,
व्यवहार
strong,
करते थे और उनकी
dominating
बहुत बड़ी
personality.
स्ट्रॉन्ग
And
डोमिनेटिंग
basically
पर्सनालिटी
everyone,
थी।
he was very adamant about his views.
वो अपने व्यूज
It's
को
like
बहुत
this,
ही
and that's
स्ट्रांगली
it.
रखते
There's
थे
no other
कि बस ऐसे
discussion,
करना है
basically.
और कोई इसके ऊपर
And everyone
डिस्कशन
was a bit scared
नहीं
of him
होगा।
because
और
he
वो
was a
मेरे
very sort of
बॉस थे
strong
और सभी
personality.
उनसे बहुत डरते थे क्योंकि
And
वो
I was
बहुत
just
स्ट्रांग
starting
पर्सनालिटी
my
थे।
sort of journey
तो
with
मैं अपना
meditation, and
यात्रा शुरू कर रहा था,
I
अपनी
had a little
आध्यात्मिक यात्रा,
experiment with just,
मेडिटेशन सीख रहा था। मैंने
showing
एक
him
एक्सपेरिमेंट
respect.
किया। रोज
build a
पाया
facade my way
उनके
or the
प्रति
highway.
बना लिया था
It's
मैंने उनको।
softness, and if you become humble, if you try not to at least stand up to that, confront that, then I think in time that facade can break down and the true person can emerge. But it doesn't always happen, let's be honest, and it needs patience. But I think always in human relationships, humility is a very powerful weapon to diffuse aggression or stubbornness or negativity.
That's wonderful. Can I explore that a little bit more? What would respect in your example? What did that look like? Was it that you then did everything the person asked you to do, or what? How does that translate into, interaction that then gave you that success?
Well, I literally practiced not seeing him as my boss or the ex-sergeant major, to see the soul. I literally looked at him as a soul, as like a brother. And I was sort of, it was an experiment to try and sort of connect with him on a different level. Because I feel the greatest respect for another is to see them as their true self, as the soul, not the facade. Because all the facades are built to cover up vulnerabilities and sensitivities. And when we take off that facade, and you can connect with the real person. So I think often respect and humility allows people to, you know, step back from the facade that I often build in a society which is unfriendly, unkind, and aggressive. People build facades to manage all the stuff that we have to deal with.
That is so amazing, what you have shared. So it's, you know, because often like you think that the way to win people's heart is to be, you know, always agree with them, or, you know, always be kind to them. But what you have shared is a new perspective, really a new lens to look at it, is with that soul conscious awareness. That's, yeah, very.
You know, I mean, I think once when I was in South Africa, I was there when Nelson Mandela was made the president of South Africa, and it had been such a country in turmoil. And yet all the different parties, which was the racial groups, which they would call the blacks, the whites, the Indians, so we'd call the Asians and the coloreds, there'd been so much conflict. And yet Nelson Mandela respected everyone. And he even respected his enemies. And what I really learned is the most powerful thing to do to someone opposing you is to respect them. Almost human nature is to oppose them the same way. So it's two bulls that are knocking heads together. But he actually respected even the people who jailed him, and he won them over. He absolutely won them over, but it has to be genuine. He even learned things, even though they jailed him for 27 years and put him in solitary confinement. But he just didn't have hatred, which polarizes. He actually even respected some of their personalities and so on. It's the most powerful thing to change a dynamic in a relationship or someone opposing you or even whatever, is to give them respect. And somehow that shifts their response to you.
Now I'm even more curious, because you brought in another dimension to it, is enemy, you know, where they have either caused you harm or hurt, or, you know, done something really wrong. So I get the idea that you shared earlier, with the example of your boss looking at it as a soul. But then what more, or what do you suggest, you know, that involves in still having the respect, maintaining that vision of respect towards someone, you know, who has caused harm and hurt, and you know, where, yeah, there is a lot of dislike. So how do you shift that to respect?
Yeah.
What does that entail as respect? Can you give us an example or strategy of how we can, yeah, cultivate that respect in those circumstances?
You know, let's be real. They are challenging circumstances. There's no doubt. But, you know, I think when this whole show is around spirituality and the power of spirituality and virtues in practical life. And one of the things I've found, one of the most important things for me on this journey has been learn the value of detachment. Because when you're detached from people's aggression or harm making, defamation, whatever, you can remain objective. And even, I would say, rather than falling back into the pattern of hating them, rejecting them, insulting them, etc., you offer mercy. Because I would say that, why do people harm other people? Because, you know, they're under the influence of their own nature. They've lost their own spiritual power. It's innate in the human spirit to be kind and to be loving. And if I'm not kind and loving, I've come under the influence of my own ego and negativity and fear often. And that's why often the sort of the personality that's shown to the world can be so aggressive. But it's like dogs. Dogs are aggressive because they're afraid. Human beings are the same. They're fearful, and so that aggression or that harm making can come out. And yet, if we have the objectivity, if we can be detached and see this person is under an influence, it's like sometimes when someone's angry, you know, if they're really angry, it's a very difficult thing to see. But what are they saying? Help me, I'm in pain. That anger is in an emotional, spiritual pain. So if I see the anger on the surface, I really reject and I may be angry back. But if I see the soul, I can see the soul's so frustrated, so disturbed that it only knows how to explode, emotionally explode. Now, there's no doubt to be in this stage, you have to be, you know, in an elevated space. But that's what spirituality is about. Strengthening me so I don't respond with all the old anger, hurt, aggression, insulting, but I respond from a place of truth, my higher self.
I was almost feeling like, you know, when you were describing that it's like having not just the vision that there is soul, but also having that vision of mercy and empathy of what they're going through, versus judging of what they're going through, being critical. So that's, yeah, I think that's a flexibility in how we see, right? And what we choose to focus on.
It's so true. I mean, you know, once I remember in Sydney, we had something called the Peace Pavilion in the Sydney Festival, which is a month-long festival. And we used to build this pavilion. And we had numerous speakers who would come and speak about peace. And I remember once there was a woman speaking who was the president of the Australian Peace Foundation, beautiful lady. And she began to speak and talk about peace. And there was a man sitting in the front who openly, I think he maybe had a few drinks, but he was openly aggressive and criticizing and yelling. And he'd been in the war and he'd suffered, obviously. And she didn't react. She listened to all the insults and disrespect. And then she said, you know, I know how you feel. I know what you've been through. And after 5 minutes, he was sitting there listening, hanging on every word she said. Because rather than reacting and rejecting, she listened to him, showed him respect, and changed his complete perspective. So her flexibility changed the dynamics of the whole situation so quickly. It was an amazing scene, that how powerful flexibility, humility, listening skills can be.
Absolutely. And yet so simple, you know, generally power is so equated to all the physical security and all that we build around ourselves. But here it is so much of that inner work that you've outlined, about, you know, how I see, what I think. So I'm really enjoying listening to this conversation, and I'm feeling like I fully agree with you. But I know what's going to happen is after this session is finished, I'm going to move on to the next thing. And all these ideas that you have shared, which has deeply touched my heart, are going to slowly dissipate. So what can one do that what we are listening to at this very moment and that we are agreeing with, how can we build that becomes something part of our nature? you know, that it becomes the reality of me for, you know, rest of my day, my week, my month, and so on. So, you know, how does one change, make flexibility part of my life?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I remember once sitting in a workshop with a group of people, and we're all reflecting on the question, what do I need most at this time? And, you know, they came to the conclusion, what we need is inner power, spiritual power. I know I want to be more flexible. I know I want to be more tolerant. I know I want to be more understanding and merciful. I know where I want to go, but how to get there. And in a way, the whole of the spiritual practice is building my inner power to be the person I want to be, so that I'm not just theoretical. I know all the stuff in my head, but as you say, as soon as I go out there, I behave in the old way. And this is why, sometimes I think spirituality is anchoring myself back into my spiritual power, my internal strength, with those two anchors. And the first is not just knowing, not just believing, but living in a soul conscious way. And to me, this is like the spiritual journey is paying attention to living as a soul. And the more I go on, the more I love the reality, the absolute eternal reality, the truth that I don't have a gender, I don't have an age, I don't have a nationality, I don't have a religion. I am something more than all of that. And my original nature is to have the power of peace, the power of love, and the power of purity. So we all know it, actually. 80% of people believe there's something more than a body. But when I actually live it, and I often feel meditation, the first step is to know, the second step is to believe, the next 998 steps are educating myself how to experience, to move from knowing and believing to feeling and practicing. And the more I practice, I become strong. It's like I have the ability not to react, to remain flexible when someone is stubborn, is rude, is difficult, which all of us have to face on a daily basis in this world. But secondly, and probably more importantly, is the second anchor, reconnecting myself to a source that's eternally powerful, has never become weak. And to me, to remember God. And I really love this because remembering is the most natural function of the human intellect. At every millisecond, I'm remembering what you said, what I said, what you did, what I have to do. And really, when I remember, three things happen. I connect first. Whatever I connect with, a memory, a person, a behavior, I'm influenced. And whatever I'm influenced by, I feel inside. So wherever my mind is connecting to the past, connecting to a behavior, connecting to a situation, connecting to a memory of sorrow, a memory of sadness, a behavior that hurt me, what happens? I'm influenced by that. And all we're learning here is to live in this world and remember that which will empower me rather than disempower me. So when I remember who I am and who God is, I'm empowered. It's like my power reserves are going up. As soon as I connect into that memory that was horrible and terrible, I disempower. As soon as I connect into that behavior, someone who is rude or insulting, I disempower. And it's almost like having the wisdom that I am living in this challenging world, but the more I remember, I step back into my power. And when I'm in my power, I can adjust to people. I have my self-respect. Okay, if they have an opinion that I don't agree with, that's fine. If they behave in their way, that's okay. I can be flexible. I'm not going to take sorrow. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to be disturbed by. So it empowers me to tolerate, be flexible, to adjust, to adapt, etc. And that's what spirituality is. And I think why Manoj began this series, as far as I'm aware, is that to remind us that actually all these qualities, flexibility, all these things are my original nature. I don't have to try to become something. It's almost like the more I know who I am, they automatically re-emerge in a natural way.
And what you've been sharing, Charlie, is this something that like, because you started by sharing that we practice this, right? So is this something that one, practices? And, what are your kind of suggestion? When should one practice, remembering who I am, connecting with the thoughts? And yeah, be great to get more insights into if that's what you mean by practice. And I imagine also the practice in terms of then being flexible, when it comes to an action.
I mean, I think there's like 3 approaches to what we're doing here. A spiritual life, in a sense. It can be a hobby. So we come on to the Values in Life project. We love the thoughts and that. But as soon as we switch off the computer, I'm back in that world. And I sort of take on that persona once again. Secondly, it can be a discipline. And you know what I'm finding? A lot of people meditate regularly now, which is so good. But often, as soon as I stop meditating, I switch back to my old thinking. I just switch back to my old perception, my old thinking, my old reality, my old reactions. What I'm observing really works these days is when I adopt spirituality as a lifestyle. I put a little structure into every single day. And it's really what you were saying, that, I'm at really applying. It's like I'm in the classroom of life applying these ideas. And I'm not always successful. But the more I really apply living in a soul conscious way, observing if I'm flexible to this person that I often find a bit challenging, and even if I start to increase my flexibility to that person or those people I really do find challenging, deep down, your sense of self starts to grow. My observation of myself is that when I behave according to my truth, and I do give respect even to those who maybe don't give to me, you feel that's the right thing. But if I respond in the old way and start the same game of criticism and putting down, deep down, it damages my relationship with me. I don't feel so good about who I am. And I really feel now in this world that spirituality, if I practice as a lifestyle, and often I think, what is meditation? It's not just something you do morning and night. It's an attitude to life. I have made a decision in my life. I'm going to live as a peaceful soul. That's who I am as a person. Whether it's in my family, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in any situation in life with friends, whatever, I am going to live according to my truth. And the more I practice, this is my own experience, the more you move from the theory to the reality. Because I think we live in a world with so many theories. There must be billions of self-help books out there, billions. There's that many theories. But what I love here is we really try to practice on a daily basis, and that gives you your self-respect and power back.
Not just books nowadays, Charlie. By the new thing is ChatGPT. You can ask a question and it would have reference thousands of books and give you a one-line answer. So knowledge is now at everyone's fingertips. But it's, I think what you really emphasized is this aspect of practice. And what I'm understanding, what you're sharing also is practicing the soul consciousness and also connecting to the source to get power. I'm keen to learn a little bit more on that, you know, because I also find in this journey of, practicing this vision, this really high attitude and bringing it in my interaction, you often experience a lot of hurt, you know, when you get exposed to situations where you don't think really weak. So how can one continue to, not be lost in its own sadness and sorrow and be in a state where it can continue to be flexible, continue to be accommodative?
You know, Ami, in a way, in this world, we're so intellectually equipped. We're so sharp, so razor sharp, intelligent. But sometimes we're so emotionally ill-equipped, so that I feel often emotionally we're on empty, or spiritually there's a vacuum. And so to fill that vacuum, the mind has become like a vacuum cleaner, so to speak. So if you give me love, if you give me respect, if you give me cooperation, I absorb it all. But if you insult me, I absorb that. If you criticize me, I absorb that. And then I blame you. And this is the culture of today, being a victim and blaming, being a victim. And it's the absolute culture of family life and workplace at the moment. And, you know, what we learn here spiritually is, to really fill myself up. And I had a little saying for myself for many years, that only my ego accepts sorrow. If I'm being hurt, upset, the false self is ruling my inner system. I'm under a deception. Because when I'm soul conscious, I don't take sorrow from others. But it's not that I force myself, it's a natural thing. Because when you're full, you don't need anything really. But when you're empty, you're so needy of love and respect and acknowledgement and all that stuff. If I don't get it, I feel hurt and angry. But the more you fill up from knowing the self and knowing God and you feel full, then it's almost like a natural consequence, the addiction. And often I put it like that because I often feel we have a PhD in taking sorrow, We're experts at being affected. But the more I build back my inner power and I have self-respect, I can be flexible. With any personality or any situation, I adjust. And that ability to adjust softens the consequences of so many things, even nullifies the consequences, even changes them into positive. What was sometimes so negative. The power of humility and the power of self-respect just is amazing. But that's the journey, to just step back into that place of self-empowerment, which is rebuilding my inner spirituality.
That is fantastic, what you've shared, and what a great analogy of a vacuum. What came to my mind was a vacuum cleaner, which we generally use to clean up all the dust and rubbish and suck that in. So like you said, when we are taking, things from outside, that's like sucking in the rubbish inside. So it's fantastic. I'm a little bit keen to, you touched on it slightly, connecting to God, knowing God. I want to learn a little bit more from you on this aspect. Is what exactly do we do with that? Like, how does one, connect and draw the power? So that I'm usually hoping that's not the vacuum sucking we're doing, but really bathing in that. So yeah, how does that work? Can you enlighten us on that a little bit more?
A little bit, maybe taking a little bit further the remembering analogies. That actually, I find these days, if you invite people to meditate, a lot of people yearn to meditate and have such a pure intent, but really find it too difficult and internally feel I'm a bit of a failure as a meditator because my mind wanders all over the shop. And I sit there and I find I start to dwell on this, dwell on that, a memory from today, etc. And what I love about remembering God is that firstly, it's natural. I'm not trying to meditate. Meditation implies I'm sort of trying to elevate my consciousness. And if I don't feel I'm sort of in a completely different space, I feel I'm not doing it properly. But remembering is natural. And fundamentally, it's that simple. What is the destination of my remembering? What do I plug into it? And if I plug into a past memory, a difficult relationship, an anxiety about something that's going to happen, as soon as I plug in, I'm influenced by that and I feel peaceless, disturbed, unhappy, uncomfortable. But if I plug into the Supreme Soul, a soul that is never influenced, a soul that retains truth, but it's not a concept, it's not a belief, it's not an intellectual idea, I'm actually connecting, remembering a living, pulsating, aware, conscious being. But the challenge, a being that does not have sense organs like you or me. You and I are having a conversation. You're speaking, I'm speaking, you're listening, I'm listening. We're connecting through our sense organs. This relationship is totally as real, but it's like with a soul without sense organs. So how do I remember? And once I have knowledge, and I'm remembering a being that loves me, a being that accepts me, a being that respects me, and it's real. I'm actually connecting. Because, when you remember a family member you're close to, as soon as you connect, you feel comfortable inside. If you remember a family member that you're having a difficult relationship with, as soon as you remember, you feel uncomfortable inside. And so it's almost that simple, that the more I remember, the more I'm connected to that positive plug-in, so to speak. I'm plugging into a positive, loving, accepting being. It's almost like automatically I feel with power, peace. I just fill up. And it's almost like the challenge is to live my life remembering as much that being as I go about my life. And that's fundamentally the heart and soul of a spiritual practice these days. If I keep remembering the past and people and behaviors and insults, I'm going to be in a very low state because that will hurt. That will just influence me. But if I remember the ocean of love, peace, power, happiness, that will influence me. And that's almost like, to me, it's paying attention to what I remember. It's that simple. And that's what I try to do. And when I notice my mind remembering something which is not so sweet or is negative, I try to tweak it instantly rather than dwell on it. Because for some reason we have attraction to remembering, thinking about the negative things, how people have hurt me or disrespected me or insulted me. Instantly put it back, instantly pay attention. And then the more I'm remembering there, it's like the whole quality of my life is upgraded. It's pretty simple, actually. And this is really what that spiritual journey is really about, living in this world with all the challenges, not running away from it, not avoiding it, but going beyond it by connecting as much as possible.
Wonderful. I feel like you have simplified the practice of meditation by saying it's about remembrance of who I am, and remembrance of how the source sees me, and connecting with that. Should we be like, is there, from your experience, you know, a specific, we touched on the 3 approaches and the third one was lifestyle. Is there a specific lifestyle you would suggest to practice this remembrance? You know, how much time should we spend? So when then I come into the field of action, it's more natural for me to be flexible. And yeah, so what would your guidance on that front be?
Balance. I think balance is the great wisdom of life today. I need to give time to family, time to work, but the real secret is the third one, time for me. Because in this world, we ignore the self and wonder why sometimes I feel so drained, so empty, so exhausted, sort of not only physically, almost mentally and emotionally. And what the lifestyle of balance is to wake early in the morning and really practice remembering. In other words, practice not allowing my mind to go to the things that bring me down. What is, you know, the problem going on in my life, the difficulty with my boss at work or a colleague at work, a family member who may be ignoring me or doing this or that. Often we dwell on that stuff, then we wonder why we're not happy. It's obvious, actually. And if I wake up in the morning and create an awareness of remembering the self and God in my mind, that colors my thoughts throughout the day. So even when you're in a meeting or you're with a client or a patient or whatever, you have to concentrate and be present and deal with it effectively. But because you've done the work in the morning, the thoughts that are coming out of that deep awareness of love for the self and God, they're healthy thoughts. So they just keep empowering me throughout the day, even when I have to totally focus on a situation or responsibility with whatever is my work or my responsibility in the family. What I love about, for me, what the Brahma Kumaris are teaching is that it integrates my spiritual life with my worldly life, so to speak. Sometimes there's a separation, you know. Some people feel either I'm spiritual and I lock the door and lock out the world and I can relax. But here, we try to go deep in my spirituality and then bring it into each corner of my life. Now, that takes practice. There's no doubt. It takes practice, and sometimes we fail. Things upset me, things affect me. But if we every day keep practicing, we actually get stronger and stronger and stronger. And the stronger we get, the more flexible I am with everything that comes in front of me. The weaker I feel, that's when I can only respond with rigidity and rejection and stubbornness, because I feel threatened. When I'm in my self-respect, I don't feel threatened by different behaviors, different attitudes, different whatever, cultures, lifestyles, thinking. Yeah, people can think differently from me. They have every right. I can be totally flexible.
Thank you so much, Alibai, for sharing these gems with us today. Going back to the analogy that we started this conversation with, that of the tree, I think you've taken us the full circle to show us how we can be that strong tree that can, you know, grow high and look up and take that sunlight from that spiritual sun, God, and the importance of giving, you know, good nutrition, of good thoughts, and the daily water of good thoughts, you know, so I can weather the many storms that we continue to face each day. And for me, I think what's going to really stay is the remembrance and finding that balance and creating that time each morning to remember what you have shared today, and remembering also who I am, and maintaining that vision of being flexible in my thoughts and in my interaction. So thank you so much. And now I will hand over to Brother Manoj.
So
Thank you,
so-
Ami. Really appreciate.
So thank you so much, both of you, for this very inspiring conversation, but quite a few thought-provoking questions. I think the first one I would want you to answer, Brother Charlie, is you spoke about balance. So a few questions in the chat box are related to that can I be flexible with my routine? Of course, you can be flexible, but I think we need to really strike a balance between flexibility and determination. So I want you to throw light on this aspect, that when I'm dealing with other people, I need to be flexible with their sanskars so that I don't have a personality crash with them. But with me, with myself, I need to be persistent and determined, not rigid. Rigid is a very strong word. So do you want to tell us how to have this balance between flexibility in what things and determination in what things with the self?
Yes, I think, we need both, don't we? I think we need to be flexible with people and situations, but determined to maintain that open mind and that sort of flexibility with the different natures of people, because, we need that inner strength or that determination to maintain my flexibility, because the main question, I would say, Manoj Bhai, that we're asked all over the world in all our centers is how to deal with difficult people. I mean, people just, if you open most people, the conversation in their head, there's so many conversations about all the difficult people and how people are making my life really challenging. And this is where I have to have the flexibility with them, but the determination not to fall back into the old patterns of, oh, there's such negative people, there's such difficult people, they're this, they're that, the labeling, because all those thoughts make me weak, actually. And so everything has a flip side to it, doesn't it? This determination that I need to have a focus in my own journey and have the strength to keep to that, to maintain that focus, and at the same time being flexible with everything around me. And sometimes even being flexible with myself, in a sense that if I do react wrongly in a situation, the emotion does get the better of me, be a bit easy, be a bit flexible, say, okay, not punishing of myself, but say, okay, I'm going to learn from that and move on quickly, rather than squandering and starting regretting and feeling guilty and feeling heavy, in that way, to be a bit flexible too, rather than heavy-handed and rigid with myself. So, wisdom is actually knowing when I need to be flexible with people and the self, and when I need to be determined with the self especially. Determination is the spiritual side, but when determination takes on the, so we say, the body conscious side, it becomes rigidity and stubbornness. And some people just say, oh, I'm just determined, but actually it can be a real stubbornness. And that stubbornness never works in my experience.
Yes, absolutely. Therefore, stubbornness is not a value.
It's
Okay.
certainly not, but determination is, and there's a fine line between the two. Determination can sometimes become stubbornness. I become too stubborn. And yet real determination has flexibility as well. I remain determined, but I'm not going to be rigid in my thinking or my outlook. I can listen to a different perspective. And even if that perspective's different from me, that's okay. That's fine. I have a perspective which works for me. That's where I'm at. But you have a different perspective. we're living in a world now where people feel if you think differently from me, that's wrong or that's bad, or I reject you. And yet spirituality says that's fine. You have every right to have a different perspective to me. And yet sometimes we find even religious people can be, you know, we have a love for God, and yet still we can be very intolerant, which is interesting. You know, to me, that's, you know, when it's more just about faith, which can create rigidity rather than practice, which creates flexibility.
Sure, wonderful. So if we speak about flexibility, Hatha Yoga, that the yoga exercises, all that comes into the being. So if you speak at it, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of physical body, physiotherapy, so we always get these two terms very commonly associated with flexibility, endurance and strength. So if you look at it from the perspective of mental flexibility, everything related to the mind. So what is endurance for the mind and strength of the mind? You spoke about the powers of the mind, but do you want to elaborate how to develop the strength of the mind and the endurance of the mind?
The strength of the mind for me is I don't resort to negativity. And in this world, the media, everything, it's all about criticism, bringing people down, being, you know, every way you look, sometimes it's all about resorting to a negative outlook or criticism. A strong mind can live in this world and see good in others and see good. You can see the whole picture, but it's like a decision that I'm going to see the value of others. To me, this is the most powerful thing of a leader. A leader, if a leader sees value in those they're responsible for, even though everyone has weakness, but I choose to see the value, they're incredibly powerful leaders and empowering leaders. And so I think to be, you know, really have a strong mind in this way is you know, so important to see the good, be positive. And I'm sorry, Manoj, what was the other thing?
Yeah, the other is endurance of the mind.
Endurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I find love creates endurance. You know, and I often feel, for me, the foundation of my spiritual journey is a deep, deep experience of God's love. And that gives you the power to face anything and the power to endure. Because sometimes life, you know, is up and down. There's not one person listening to this at the moment who doesn't have to face so many things in life. But I find that love, that relationship with the divine, when it's real, gives you so much power to endure and resilience to the stuff we have to face. And if we don't have it, then sometimes it just gets to me and I just feel so down, and all my thinking takes me into this dark place of hopelessness. But love is the great power which creates resilience and endurance to me.
Yes, and I remember you had covered for us benevolence. Love is in benevolence. There, the word itself, benevolence, has LOVE. You also covered for us patience, because I think patience and flexibility go hand in hand. And I remember you had really elaborately covered very well. I want you to throw a little bit of light on also this concept that people, I think Sister Amy actually covered this, but again, this at the workplace, people say I'm very flexible with my staff, with my colleagues, but they take me for granted and they treat me like a doormat. And then they say, oh, this one is flexible, so she can do all the work, and let her dump everything onto her. But that soul is saying that it becomes very difficult for me, that I am the only person who's flexible and can take their, whatever they are saying, I'll do the work for them. But I am not able to strike this balance of telling them no. I think we need to say no to people as well. We can't be flexible all the time. So how do you said with respect and gentleness, that's of course very true. But she's saying I want to strike that balance. And can meditation help me in doing that?
Yep. You know, I think most of us are people pleasers because we lack self-respect. When I please others, they respect me, they value me, and that's the culture of today. You know, we become people pleasers, but spirituality, a lot of people think makes you a bit of a doormat, a bit weak. Just please, not at all. But as we were saying, Ami and I were talking, if I need to say no, it's not the word no, it's the intent and the feelings behind it. Now, if the intent is love and respect, it'll be taken well. But if the intent is mixed with a little bit of negativity, it won't be taken well. And so it's how I express. And I feel that when I really come from this place of valuing you and I say, no, I don't think that's the right way to do it. And really showing that kindness and love to that person, they will accept it. It's often that people feel, no, it's wrong. And that instantly puts people on defenses and turns them off. So when we have to say something, it's how I say it. It's the feelings behind it. Sometimes I feel there's criticism and constructive criticism. Criticism is when you speaking and pointing out someone's weakness or fault, but you have negativity, you have negative feelings behind it. But constructive criticism, when you really love somebody and they know you love them, you value them, so they listen to it as almost a support. You're supporting them in their work or their whatever. And I would say that the great leaders that really help to change and unify a workplace or something, they really have genuine love and respect and valuing the people around them. So people feel it. So when you offer an idea that is a bit different or a constructive criticism, they don't take it as criticism. They take it as, it's all about the intent. Is the intent with love and respect or the intent with hurt and a little bit of anger and negativity? Will always do damage. When the intent is really coming out of that true place, people feel support.
Intent matters behind everything. And
Yeah.
another brother is asking, he's recently started going to the Raj Yoga Meditation Center, and he's telling me why it's a put off. I'll explain you in short. He's saying that whenever there's any problem, I go to the center and I tell the instrument over there that problem, and she says, oh, be soul conscious, forget. So he says that it's so difficult to be soul conscious, and it's a big put off when she tells me like that. And I want to ask you this question because you have been practicing Raj Yoga, and the essence of Raj Yoga is being soul conscious since 40 years, more than 40 years now. So it's easier said than done. I know it's not very easy to be soul conscious 24/7, but few practical tips for this brother, that because he's saying, when I want to meditate, it becomes a put off. Then I don't want to meditate because I feel it's so difficult. Let's just leave it and go and do some other things which are more productive. So how do I make my meditation more productive? I think that's the question I would ask. And try to practice soul conscious more naturally rather than bind it and make it so difficult.
Well, that's another huge conversation, actually. But, you know, in one way, the sister is right, but it's so simplistic, that answer. Because in soul consciousness, it's almost like what I'm doing is stepping back into a place of self-value. I'm taking back the authority of my inner world. I'm gently, through realizing the self, connecting with God, this practice of remembrance, sort of healing myself deeply. And problems will come to us. And our habit is to be emotional. We get very emotional. We take on sorrow and hurt so easily. But what we learn here is to be knowledgeful. So to observe that nothing happens for a reason. And I'm now on a journey to heal. So I can react and get disturbed and emotional because what people did wasn't correct. Or I can look at it in a bigger picture. So I start to frame it differently, that actually we're at a time where everyone is under the influence of their own nature. So much negative. So I contextualize so that I don't overreact. And then I begin to sort of think, well, the reality is he's a soul under the influence of his karmic story. And I'm a soul too, that I'm carrying my karmic story too. I can react and get hurt, but no, now I choose not to. And so I sort of contextualize it with wisdom rather than just letting the emotions come. This is the journey, this journey into soul consciousness. And there's hundreds and hundreds of aspects of creating a soul conscious state. Fundamentally, it's rebuilding my inner strength and my inner power by knowing and living in a relationship with God. But perhaps he is just feeling that it's too simplistic. And maybe there's someone at the center who you can engage with more deeply about your practice, what you're facing, and how to actually use different aspects of the knowledge to deal with all the multifold challenging situations of this world. The main thing, though, never, ever give up, really, because this takes me back to my truth. And I would, there are challenges, and maybe even, sometimes we want advice, but it's not the correct advice that's going to really help me. But even be patient with that, and maybe find somebody whom you can really relate to, who's going to give you advice that is going to work for you personally, while maintaining respect for everybody, including the center person that you've been talking to.
Wonderful. I'm afraid the time is coming to a close for questions, but I'll take this last question in the interest of time. It's a very interesting question, and it's very practical. That I love meditation. I want to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, but I can't get up. I get up at around 5:30, 6 a.m. But once I get up, I really enjoy my meditation at that point of time when I'm doing, and I really feel very good. So am I committing a sin or a crime by not getting up at 4 a.m.?
Of course not. Of course not. It's not a sin or a crime, because this is our old thinking of punishing the self. And I don't know, you are getting up to meditate, and yet still sometimes that self-criticism comes in but in saying that, gently work towards getting up at that time of early morning around 4 a.m. What I've found for me is I just programmed myself to be up at that time, and it just happens. I'm always up at that time. And I think that because it's the dead of night, the quality of vibrations at that time are really the highest. So don't punish the self, but just gently aim towards waking up at a time that at that 4 a.m. time. I feel that religion teaches us this sort of self-punishment and guilt and shame and all that sort of stuff. They don't do it intentionally, but it sort of has been, that's the effect. But spirituality says, have this high determination. And if you're not getting there quite yet, be gentle and kind to yourself. And just keep aiming, and you will get there. You will definitely get there, but it may take a while. And don't overreact or punish yourself if you don't wake up at the right time.
So never give up and be gentle with yourself. Yeah, that's the takeaway point. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now I would invite one of our very younger brothers, who's the IT brother with us. I'll request Brother Nikhil to propose the vote of thanks to you. Thank you, Brother Nikhil. Over to you.
Om Shanti. Thank you, brother, so much for your talk. So much spiritual insights we get from your talk, and I really like the way you explained about maintaining that self-respect, and then never let yourself down and always keep up with your truth of who you are and living that as a soul conscious way in each and every interaction. So what I see is always when I listen to that reality of who you are and who you belong to, that always empowers me, and I always feel that I have to keep on going and maintain my own spiritual value. And thank you so much for your empowering talk. And I know everybody is had had taken that point that they need to practice that for themselves in the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Bye, and thank you for your sweet words, and thank you, Manoj. Bye.
Thank you
for
so
your,
much. And before we, yeah, sorry. So
I was just going to say, for your tirelessness holding this in amongst your incredibly busy life. It's amazing, really. And thank you, Sister Taran, and thank you, Ami. Thank you, everybody. It's been lovely to be with you. Very lovely.
thanks a lot, all of you. And before we move on to the meditation, let's quickly look at the announcements for the coming episodes and the workshops. So as all of you know, we always try to explore the value with a senior Raj Yogi, as Brother Charlie mentioned, his words of wisdom. Then we go into a workshop mode in the next coming weekend. So Saturday, the normal time as we do, it is between both these brothers as well. So we'll do the first hour of experiential exercises. And then we have both our brother Simos from Spain, Brother Enrique and Brother Bill. Both are Lockett brothers as well. And also both of them actively are part of the national coordinating team in Spain. So don't miss this. It is on Saturday, 1st of June, the coming Saturday, the same time for West Coast and India. And as always, we always try to end up that value, sum up with the silence retreat so that we benefit from that 2-hour silence during the silence retreat and make sure that the value really seeps into our inner being. It actually comes out from the core, but for some reason, as Brother Charlie was sharing, we forget it, we don't use it. So in the silence retreat, it's though written here, it's for BK students, but quite a few people who join. It's a lot of meditation in between, a lot of silence, reflection in between as well. And it's a 2 hours. So that happens on the Sunday, the day after the workshop, and Sunday morning for India time, and West Coast, it's Saturday late evening. And our next value, 92, is on innovativeness, on newness. We call in Hindi Naveenta. And it's our dear brother Mike George, who's also a very famous author and a spiritual coach himself. So we'll be having that on Saturday, 8 June. Remember, it's the same Saturday time. We shift always for Australia time to Sunday mornings for India. But we'll be back to our schedule again on Saturday, 8th of June. And these are our websites. These are our email addresses. Feel free to leave your comments, feedbacks, whatever you want to share. And all these are recorded. They're all freely available on the YouTube. These are the playlists in case if you want to quickly write it down. They are not clickable, sorry. So omshanti.live/playlist and English, #English, and -English. You can then type down French, Spanish, all the other languages, you'll get it. And the workshop playlists are .live/workshops. Please write into us to know your feedback on this. I'll just stop sharing the screen, and with this now we move on to the concluding part of the series of the episode. Is all about practicing that, going into the meditative mood. So I'll request Brother Charlie to do that. Thank you.
For these final few minutes, let us put down devices and sit with gentle determination. Let me ask my heart, am I flexible? Do I adjust to the changing scenes of life? Do I adapt to those who have different opinions, different perspectives? And when I really look at my reactions, maybe sometimes I'm a little bit rigid, stubborn, inflexible. The whole of this spiritual journey is to empower me, strengthen me, so that flexibility is my natural state. I'm like the tree, bending and adjusting to the winds of life. To take back my inner power, visualize the eternal self. I, the minute conscious star, sitting in the front of the brain, in the center of the forehead. Just let go, step back, withdraw, and sit lightly in the forehead, beyond all the limitations of the body. I am a peaceful soul. And in this state, let me remember the form and qualities of the divine. A radiant jewel, an unlimited ocean of peace, love, and power. As I connect, as I'm influenced by this peace and love and power, my inner strength returns. My inner power returns. And the great gift of self-respect returns. And when I know and who I am and live in my self-value, it's natural to be flexible, to adjust to all the change that's happening in life. Because internally, I'm stable. Internally, I know who I am. Internally, I know who I belong to. And this foundation of strength makes me like the tree. I bend, adjust, adapt. It does not mean I'm weak. I can express, but I express with great love and respect. Spirituality is having a loving relationship with myself as a soul, and a loving relationship with God, the divine, the supreme soul. And automatically, the values and virtues begin to re-emerge. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Brother Charlie, for the beautiful experience and for your words of wisdom. And thank you, Sister Amy, as well, for being there for the conversation. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.